Welcome back. We were just talking about Democrat Jason Crow's win over Mike Coffman here in Colorado. That was part of a power shift in Congress. While Republicans will hold on to the majority in the U.S. Senate, Democrats will control the U.S. House for the first time in 8 years. And joining us to talk about the changing political climate in Washington is political science professor Dr. Norman Provisor from Metro State University, Denver. So thank you so much for being here.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.
So this big shift in Washington, is this a good thing?
Well, again, it's going to depend on what side of the political spectrum you're viewing it from. For some people, it's a good thing. For others, not so good. But if you think about it, there was something for everyone in this election. It was kind of a split decision. Not unexpected. We had talked all along about Democrats had a great chance to capture the House, right, and didn't have much of a chance to capture the Senate.
Right.
And part of that was simply, in the numbers, the number of Democrats up for re-election was much more than the number of Republicans up, and the Democrats had a number of very vulnerable seats, seats that people won in states that later on Trump won running for president. And all of that kind of played out more or less the way polls told us and the way things went. It really did. So you had a Democratic win in the House, and that is a major difference, because one of the things in terms of the American system of government is the whole checks and balances idea. And for the last couple of years, there have been no checks and no balances because the Republicans controlled everything. So now everything has, remember, in order to pass a law, you need both houses of Congress to support it. Support a bill, and then it goes to the president. Now, people have to contend, the White House has to contend with a Democratic Congress. Something has to pass it. Now, one of the other things that this might highlight is how much the current president has tried to depend on executive orders and doing things without Congress at all. And that may become more difficult. The temptation may be to do it more, but I think it's going to become more difficult to do.
One of the things that we saw is that there are more women serving in the House, more Latinos serving in Congress than ever before. Was this a referendum on the president, or is that just our changing population?
Well, the president would say that the Senate was a referendum on him, and he did very well there. The Republicans did well. They picked up some seats, actually. And at the House elections, he stayed away from them. One never knows what's in someone's mind, but it's almost as if the president said, this House, we may lose it. I don't want to get involved in it because I don't like to be associated with losers. And they're going to say, well, see, the president campaigned and couldn't win the House. So I'll stick with the safe thing. The safe thing was the Senate. And the Senate is a very, extremely important body. So winning the House for the Democrats is significant. It provides a check that had been absent for the last 2 years. At the same time, I think people have to also understand, on certain issues, controlling the House is a little different than controlling the Senate. And we heard, just based on the current news, Justice Ginsburg had fell, was in the hospital. And it reminds you again about vacancies on the Supreme Court. That's all within the Senate's purview. It has nothing to do with the House.
So let's talk about Jeff Sessions for a second. Do you think the Mueller investigation is at risk here with his resignation?
I think it's understandable given the candidate that was selected, and there's a whole controversy over how that selection process. But given who the candidate is, it's hard not to connect it to the Mueller investigation because of comments he's made. It was almost as if I've already told everyone what my views are on this. This investigation has gone too far. It should be shut down. He has a number of controversial views, and it's clear that the reason, it seems to me, that the reason that the president selected him was exactly for those reasons. Because as the president said, I don't know the guy. I mean, he essentially said that. Now, he does know him a little bit, but he's not a close associate of his. So I think it's clear that his opposition to the investigation was the key factor in his selection. He doesn't really have much else going for him beside that. And I think, like all things, though, sometimes the president does know enough when to pull back or when to redirect things. And
are you saying he might change his strategy now, knowing that he lost control of the House?
Well, I think he might just understand that he might not be able to go 100% the way he wants. He might have to hold back a little bit. And the Mueller investigation is kind of interesting in terms of the Republican Party, in terms of the party following the party's principles or the principles of the cult of personality surrounding Donald Trump. And if you think about it, early on, Republicans were very vocal, especially in the Senate, about if there's any effort to end the Mueller investigation, there will be a high price to pay for the president. Lindsey Graham was speaking, very strongly about that. You notice that those voices have pretty much all been silenced.
Yes. Very quickly, before we let you go, does it matter to anyone that a CNN correspondent lost his press credentials at the White House? I mean, I know it matters to journalists, but does it matter out there to the public?
Well, I think the main answer to that is really, and I think you got at that point, this isn't just about journalists. I mean, it's not, say, well, I'm a journalist and I don't like this happening to my people. The First Amendment is not ultimately to protect journalists. It's to protect the people. It's to protect democracy. You protect journalists not because you care about journalists one way or the other, but because they represent the checks needed on governmental power in order to have a democracy that has not lost its soul.
Yeah, it goes back to those checks and balances that we talked about earlier. Dr. Provisor, thank you as always.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.
Be right back.